Ostneson out of Atlanta, Georgia. We're gonna have a great conversation about franchising. I just dropped my phone. Look at that. I gotta fix that. But I'm gonna leave it in there. See, accidents happen, and it's okay. We go off the fly, we adjust, and we adapt. That's the power of entrepreneurship and business. But first of all, first question I always like asking is, how did you end up doing franchising? I mean, you're a little older. Like, when did you start entrepreneurship? When did you start your own business? Let's hear that story.
Yeah, no, at 42 years old, just to date myself off the bat here, but no, like so many of your listeners, had a career in the corporate world, and did the ladder climb, and had a great run, but I had that itch to do something a little more entrepreneurial, and for me, I kind of sidestepped into what I'm doing now, and what that looked like was leaving the large public company world for a private company. So that was a small step I took. But you had the opportunity to serve as president of Shelf Genie franchise system. So that was my entry into franchising on the franchisor side. So got to work with all of our franchise owners across North America, supporting them in their daily marketing and call center and technology, product development, really end to end. And for me, that was an eye-opening experience to really understand this path to business ownership that frankly I didn't know about previously, and I realized a lot of people don't. And long story short, partnered with the founder, we spun off, we've invested in franchises ourselves as franchisees, along with some other business partners of mine. And for the most part, we've got good people running our businesses now, and it allows me to spend about 90% of my time doing the consulting and brokerage work, where I get to play matchmaker. And I just love what I do, because I'm working with hundreds of emerging brands across the country in a whole wide array of fields that we'll probably talk about in a few minutes. And I get to introduce my clients to these opportunities in what I've dubbed non-food franchising. And so, like so many, I used to think of franchising and fast food as being synonymous, but there's this whole world of opportunities out there that I seek to try to educate on and introduce people to.
Awesome, awesome. For everybody that doesn't know what franchising is, can you give like a basic, what is franchising in a nutshell?
Yeah, by definition, it's three things. It's a shared brand. It's support coming down from corporate or the headquarters, and then there's some kind of compensation going back for that support. So, a lot of businesses may be operating as franchises out there, thinking they're licensing, but they're actually franchising. And franchising regulated by the Federal Trade Commission. A lot of crossing your T's, dotting your I's, making sure that when someone's going to make the decision to invest and become a business owner, we want to make sure they have all the facts and that they're protected stepping into it. So, franchising is as hot as ever before. I think coming out of COVID, we're just seeing more and more interest. I think people have questioned the path they're on and said, I don't necessarily want to go back in the office, or I don't want to
Yeah.
continue building someone else's empire. Maybe now's the time to scratch that entrepreneurial itch. So it's competitive out there. The great brands and the great markets are going really fast. We're always pitting our clients against other candidates all the time, and having a lot of fun though in the process.
So franchising is SEC regulated. I did not know this.
FTC regulated. Yep.
FTC
Federal
regulated.
Trade Commission. Yeah, it's an $800 billion industry, and about 800,000 owners across North America. So it's a big piece of the economy.
Oh wow. Okay. So so we talk about food. Everybody knows McDonald's and Burger King. What types of opportunities out there for the non-food franchising sector, as far as,
Yeah.
let's talk about those. I'm kind of curious as far as different types of businesses that are run like that.
Yeah, so from 30,000 feet, there are roughly 4,000 franchise brands in the US alone. I got plenty of companies I know of that are going through the franchise process. We're always adding new brands out there. And if you cut out food and lodging, those are the two categories I don't work in. That cuts out about half the market. So of the balance of those, the ones that we work, it's everything from health and wellness and fitness to home and property services. That whole $600 billion property services space has been as hot as anything else here recently. It's things like related to kids and pets and the aging population. And it's largely businesses that may have a technology component to them, but they're not going to be competing with Amazon's. They're somewhat Amazon resistant, in a lot of cases COVID resistant, maybe recession resistant. That's usually what my clients are looking for. They're saying, hey, I want to go in and de-risk it as much as possible. Show me everything that, it requires the fewest employees with the highest return, but also, sensitive to the macro environment around us, whether it be COVID or what have you.
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunities created in COVID. Kind of mentioned that earlier. Um, I feel like franchising is kind of hidden because not a lot of people know about it, and people are. And I want my next question is alluding to what's the difference between franchising and starting from scratch? Because a lot of people feel like the only opportunity they have is from starting from scratch. But franchising opportunities are out there, but they're just where do people find these, and how do we get
Yeah.
into this? You know?
Yeah. Yeah, and I'd say franchising is not right for everyone, but I think if you're considering business ownership, it's definitely worth checking out. Just to go cliche on you, with franchising, you're starting on third base, not first base. You're in business for yourself, but not by yourself. And what I mean by that is, with franchising, you've got a playbook. The product market fit has already been determined and proven out in other markets. Now you've got a chance to replicate that in your market. And really, on day one, you're marching towards profitability. You know what that path looks like because it's outlined in the playbook that you're buying into. You're not having to question, can this be profitable or how do I get to profitability? You know what that path is. So that's a huge advantage. You've got a coach on the sidelines in that franchisor. Largely your interests are very aligned. The better you do, the better they do. You've got other franchisees in other markets that you're constantly sharing best practices back and forth. They're learning things of where do we recruit to find the best talent, what marketing vehicles are working. You're sharing that knowledge. And then with franchising, another benefit would be upon the exit. So I think oftentimes people think about, we're producing cash flows along the way. Of course, as a business owner, you're also able to write off expenses that you couldn't as a W-2 employee. And then thirdly, I'd say the benefit is upon that exit. If you built the business halfway decent, you're going to be able to sell that for more than what you paid for it originally. And this is really interesting, Daniel. A study was done recently that looked at 2,000 businesses that had exits across a 10-year period. Roughly half of them were franchised, half non-franchised, but they put them together in like-kind industries. And what they found was those that were franchised actually traded at a multiple of 1.5 times those that were not franchised. So from a resale opportunity, potential buyer sees the value in the franchise.
Wow. I okay, so and I remember when I was first starting entrepreneurship, I remember looking into franchises too because like there's a lot of like franchises. And this is food because food goes to everybody's first mind.
Yeah.
Like in companies like Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A, you can be a franchise owner, but they want you there working 100% of the time. So it was like it's not really it felt like an employee franchise opportunity versus a owner or
Mhm.
part owner franchise opportunity. So like what is the difference? And it's going to be different for every company, I'm sure, because the franchisor has the ability to create whatever terms is available there. Like, are there opportunities out there? Are there tons of opportunities out there to get actually ownership versus like employeeship?
Oh, absolutely. No, I mean, the Chick-fil-A's got a very different model. They're based right down the road here. I was actually
Yeah.
with Andrew Kathy the other day. Our kids go to school together. But no, they've structured it very different, and it's worked for them, obviously. But no, with most franchises, you own that location 100%. There's not a franchisor ownership. Now, there's certain things the franchisor will have to approve upon an exit, but really, the ones that we work with are extremely supportive of those owners. And so that really isn't an issue. But no, so you hear the cliche of buying yourself a job.
Yeah.
Depending on the role you want to take, roughly half of my clients step into an owner operator role. So they're moving from, let's say, corporate full time, saying, hey, I'm ready to go jump in and be a business owner. And so they'll run the day to day, typically with the goal of over time replacing themselves with a general manager, and then they become higher level and potentially acquire franchise number two. And that's a very, very common. And that could be a business that complements the first, or it may diversify their portfolio from the first. But then there's a second one, and that represents about half my clients, and that's what we call semi-passive or semi-absentee, or you'll hear it called an executive model. Not every franchise system lends itself to this, but the majority do. So I'd say well more than half allow for semi-absentee ownership. And what I mean by that is The owner is really playing to their high payoff activities, whether that be on the front lines or the back office, but maybe putting in 10 to 15 hours a week, in some cases less. I never want to undersell that. I mean, it is going to take a little bit of rolling up your
Yeah.
sleeves, especially there at the beginning. But it really comes down to having a general manager in place that you trust to run the day-to-day operations. And I'd say that's the biggest sticking point that we face is, if someone doesn't have that person in mind, they get a little nervous about how do I find them? Because finding that person is key. I mean, that's going to make or break the business. Fortunately, I've started beta testing this with some of my clients, but one of my clients is the largest franchisee of 2 Men in a Truck moving service, operates in about 10 markets, 30 million plus business every year. And he and I did a couple of deals together last year, and I saw firsthand in each case, he put a general manager in place, set them up for success, aligned their incentives, and he's been killing it. He's come back and bought locations within 6 months on every deal that we've done. And so I've now got him coaching my clients once they sign that franchise agreement, coaching them on how do you find the GM, how do you tee them up for success. And so really excited about kind of that new initiative. It's a value add to our clients to kind of set them up strong out of the gate.
So I actually heard of 2 Men in a Truck, and I seen it, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I didn't know that was a franchise, so it's kind of piquing my interest now. So how, man, that's 2 Men in a Truck. So moving companies, that one's such an underlying one. Like that one caught me off guard because it's just I seen that one all the
Oh,
time when I was in Georgia.
you'd be amazed how many of the businesses you see out there are franchised. It's if it operates in multiple markets or multiple locations, there's a good chance it's a franchisee. Meineke, Midas, all of these that you go to on a regular basis. But it might be helpful, if we just dive into a couple of examples, and I can just share,
Yeah,
some of
let's do it. That's awesome. Let's
what's
do it.
yeah. And so again, we do a lot of deals. I mean, and we work across the country, and you know, 80 to 85% of my clients end up buying something that was never on their radar, that they really never thought about, and typically have no background in. And franchisors love that. I'd say the biggest thing, is that you're somewhat good with people. If you can work with people, if you've ever hired or fired or incentivized and retained talent, I mean that's really your key. And then your local market. Maybe you're getting involved in the Chamber of Commerce or sponsoring the Little League baseball team, stuff on the grassroots level, because the franchisor is going to do a lot of the work for you on the marketing side. And some have call centers, some have technology teams, supporting you. So a lot of that is already filled in, but it comes down to the local grassroots side. And one of my favorite clients, just outside of Boston, Wall Street attorney, 47 years old, just bought a gutter business. He never thought he'd be in the gutter business, but he loved the financials on this business, and then got to know the people behind it. And we actually did 3 deals with the same gutter business in the past 7 or 8 weeks.
Wow.
Corporate backgrounds, Wall Street attorney, people with no background in this. We had an insurance guy, but then I just had a lady, she's a PhD at the University of Arkansas, was looking for a side hustle and bought into a fitness business that caters to those 50 and above, only national brand that does that. Smaller box locations, amazing technology, great financials. These are returns. So in the case of the gutter business, their average franchise owner is doing 1.2 million in annual revenue with 380 dropping to the bottom line.
Wow.
380 net. So that's why that gets people excited right there. The exercise business, average revenue per location is about 250, dropping about 40% to the bottom line. It's called 120-ish to the bottom line. So the strategy there would probably be to open up a couple of them. All in investment on the gutter business, you're right around 200,000. On the fitness business, you're just under 200,000. So, we've got different ways of funding these. SBA loans are very common. Some people are self-funding because we have tons of cash on the sidelines. Some are tapping into their retirement and doing a self-directed plan, what's called a ROBS program, which we offer. Others are using portfolio loans where they borrow against their brokerage accounts, which is something I do personally because it's a great arbitrage opportunity.
Yeah.
But no, we just did a 10-unit oil change deal recently in Charlotte and Atlanta. A couple of guys, they planned on buying 3 locations, went up, met with the team in Cleveland, came back, said, this is a killer opportunity. Let's do 10 locations. And what they do in that case is they use prefabricated buildings backed by an investor group. And then they use unused parking spaces in a retail or shopping center. The landlord loves the additional revenue stream created by that outlaying parcel. They get great visibility and street frontage and traffic flow, 10-minute oil change, very bare bones. And they're, all in investment on that, you're between 125 and 150 per location because you're leasing the building from the investors. And when I say 125 to 150, that includes working capital. That includes your first couple of months of operating from an
Yeah.
expense standpoint. But they're kicking off 330 in top line revenue per location, 130 bottom line. Very much, that would be an example of a semi-absentee opportunity. The fitness one, semi-absentee. And so those are just a couple of recent examples. But had a client today sign for a plumbing related business, but it's specialized in drains. Talk about an essential service, and you don't need a licensed plumber on staff with this one, which is great. You actually get referrals from plumbers. So home and property services, wildly popular. Health and fitness, and people care more about their health than ever before. You've got the macro factor of the aging population. Pets are booming out there. People will always spend on their kids. We've got some great ones around that. And then there's some B2B type ones. We have a business coaching franchise, just had a client in Indianapolis buy into this, and very low overhead, scale it up. You are trading time for money with that one, but you get a really high return on that time that you're investing. We've got some others that are more cost reduction analysts. And so depending on someone's background and what they gravitate towards, do they like B2B or B2C? Do they like large teams, small teams, retail based or remote? There's just a lot of lenses that we look through to build that framework for analyzing opportunities.
So let's talk about this. What is the varying cost? I know it's going to vary based off of the profitability, but what is the varying cost to get into a baseline franchise for from entry level to low revenue to a high revenue? What's the baseline to get into a franchise?
Yeah, I'd say the lowest one that we work with is probably 70,000 all in investment, and then it goes hundreds of thousands as far as the max. About 75% of our deals fall between 100,000 and 250.
Oh wow!
To give you some ballpark, most of those have a payback period of 1 year, in some cases 2 years. If you're looking at that net return, again, you're building an asset that's going to have that exit potential in addition to the cash flow.
That's interesting. Very, very interesting. So let's talk about the exit. So you talk about that people that still have franchise businesses earlier, they get a 1.5 extra X return on selling their business, selling the franchise once it's established. So let's say it's a local business in somewhere East Atlanta, right? In Conyers or something like that. Let's say they build a business, they build it for 5 years from scratch. When they sell it, it's based off of their like net operating income, the EBITDA. What's that exit strategy? What's that exit amount look like whenever they exit?
Yeah, certainly. Of course, it varies wildly, but I'd say so. The franchises that my partners and I've invested in largely are in the home services, property services space. We build our pro formas with the assumption of an exit multiple of 0.75 to 1.25 of revenue, which translates to like a 3 to 5 bottom line EBITDA in most cases. So that being an example. So in the case of the gutter business, and obviously the larger you get, the more potential buyers. I'd say you end up on their radar. And one interesting phenomenon is private equity loves franchising. I get calls multiple times a day from private equity firms saying, "Hey, John, what do you see on the ground out there? Any franchisors that want to be acquired?" Typically, they're investing at the franchisor level. And if you just Google, you'll see all the acquisitions that have been happening. It's a lot. But sometimes, like they did with Orange Theory, they'll come in and pull together a large group of locations of franchisees. That is happening. You also see buybacks like Pods, the movable storage.
Yeah,
they were a franchise. They came in and using private equity bought back their franchisees, which provided a great exit for their franchise owners. But they wanted to turn them into corporate locations. And so you see that. But then I've also seen there was a large haircutting franchise that we worked with that had a lot of corporate locations, wanted to turn those into franchise locations. So there's a lot of activity all the way around. And part of that is there's so much money on the sidelines, and the stock
Yeah.
market's up here, interest rates down here, that they're kind of hovering a little bit right now. Only so many good real estate deals to be had in most markets.
Yeah.
And so people are like, well, where do we invest? Now, I mean, this is a first world problem, but I have these conversations all day, every day. People are saying, where do I invest? And I've started giving this talk to investors on franchising as an asset class. It's another alternative investment that, in some cases it can be truly passive. In most cases, it's at least semi-passive, but maybe you can do some coaching from the sidelines. You can get a younger person in there running the business, and you can, get on. I mean, for us, we get on a call once or twice a week with our general managers. We introduce them to referral sources. We give them ideas. We answer questions, and we hold their hand. But they're doing the day-to-day work, and we're sitting there encouraging them, supporting them along the way.
That's awesome. I really, this sector is like unheard of unless you're playing in that space. That's why there's so many different sectors in business, and it's kind of interesting hearing different facets of it. But do you help companies franchise themselves as
Yeah.
well as part of your brokering business?
So great question. So we don't personally, but like I'm a member of the entrepreneurs organization. So we've got all these companies that are in the process of growing, and many come to us and say, hey, to scale our business nationally, should we franchise it? And so I am always open to having those conversations. I love talking about all things franchising. And so having been a franchisor, I give them kind of my perspectives on, hey, there's a lot of benefits to using other people's money to scale, and you're setting yourself up for a good exit and leverage buying power, all these positives. But also tell them that, hey, you're going to wake up one day and have kids across the country with expectations of you, and you're trying to keep the kids playing nice. And so it does change your day to day. And so you need to know that going in. But no, always open to having those discussions. And then we do have some really good resources for them. Other groups that do a very nice job of taking companies soup to nuts through the franchising process that we partner with. So we actually just had one yesterday that just signed on to go through the franchise process. So you do see a lot of companies starting to wake up to franchising as a great way to scale their business. So a lot of new niches popping up. And one thing I was going to mention, where we're working with clients, introducing them to brands, there's no cost at all for our clients. It's entirely free. It's a great model. We get paid by the franchisors on the back end. For them, it's a sales and marketing expense, and none of it gets passed on to our clients in any fashion. So it really is a very clean process, very easy for our clients. We try to streamline it, make it very manageable to walk through it together.
So I have my next question. So for people that want to get into franchising, how like you said like all these corporate not corporate but corporate individuals are stepping into franchising. Like what tips can you tell them to which corporate entity do they invest in based on their skills or their time wise? Is it all based individually, or do you base it like, hey, I've been a corporate into taxes, do I go into the tax franchise? Based
Yeah.
off of their knowledge, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Again, I'd say 80, 85% of my clients end up in a field that they didn't think about before we got on the phone and started talking. And so, I've done this enough and worked with enough people. I clue in on, I can kind of read people on, what do you want that day to day to look like? What role do you want to take now? What does that look like 3 years from now? Is your wife going to be involved in the business? Do you want to bring a partner into the business? Do you enjoy getting out there talking with folks, or are you more back in support, and your first hire might be a salesperson, let's say? So we just talk through that. And I've got case studies from clients of mine where I can say, hey, your situation in your market reminds me a lot of this other one. Here's how they approached it. And so a lot of times people just need those additional data points. And I mean, while I work with hundreds of brands, at
Uh-huh.
any given time, there's probably 40 or 50 that I would say are just really the top of the pack. That if I'm putting myself in my client's shoes, these are the best opportunities in their market, for further analysis. And so, I introduce them to the brands after, flying at a very high level, giving them enough information for them to say, hey, I like this one. Let's talk to these three out of the gate, have 30-minute calls with each one. Afterwards, they may say, hey, that one's not going to be the right fit for me. But John, I really liked what they said about this. Do you have any more brands that kind of fit this profile? and they start comparing A versus B, and it can be an iterative process, but inevitably going in, if my clients say, here are the three that I want to talk with out of the ones I've presented, whatever was ranked number 3 becomes their number 1. It happens almost every time. It's the funniest thing. And maybe I'm not doing justice to how I describe them, but it's always encouraged clients to come in with an open mind. I'd say one thing that is a big variable, some people lean a little more towards having a retail footprint, like a physical location where they're customer facing. Of course, you think of fast food, but some of the examples I mentioned, fitness or auto would be more like that. But then others say, hey, I love the idea of not having a lease, being able to work remote, being more field oriented, if you will. And if I do have a physical space, it's going to be more on the back end, more industrial type space. It could be a flooring company, or we're invested in a driveway business. It's just, we don't even have to market it. There's so much demand out there. They literally are coming to us. We're not spending anything on marketing. And with the driveway business, we don't have a physical location. We operate remote. We might have a storage unit for some of our supplies, and then that we may pay a retailer to park our trucks, in their parking spaces where they get another revenue stream. We also get great, road visibility, and it's like a billboard sitting right there, with our branding on it.
Yep.
Yeah. So,
I like that it's such random businesses. It's like the you said the driveway. I'm like, what?
yeah.
It's so strange to me. Like I said, it's opening. Like I'm kind of I lost the words just because I'm like driveway plumbing. This is
people. And those are the types of businesses that people are getting most excited about. They want understandable businesses where they see the need in the market. We just had a business that sold out the Canadian market, just entered the U.S. And they're a concrete paving company. They work with parking lots, which every business, every multifamily, everything has a parking lot, and they need to keep it up, and they can't have holes in the parking lot because there are OSHA issues and tripping, could happen. Right. But they also don't want cracks because then those can get worse. And so they can literally, with their ongoing B2B recurring revenue maintenance program, whether it be parking garages or parking lots, they keep those up and maintained, but then they also can do all the line striping and wayfinding. And it's a $20 billion plus industry
that no one's even heard of.
One of the fastest growing businesses last couple of years in franchising was an insulation business. $52 billion industry, no national player. They came in and just dominated. Expanded to 250 locations in 2 years. So you've got those non-sexy businesses. A client of mine bought a dumpster business in South Carolina last year. He's now expanding into other markets. He's just killing it. And so people like those non-sexy businesses right now. I'd say that's a big thing. But they're also liking things, health and wellness. We just did up in New Jersey a deal for IV drips. And the IV drip business, they fight free radicals in the body, reduce heavy metals, boost immunity at the cellular level. There's some level of education that you have to do in the market to get people to understand it, but it's absolutely where medicine's moving. And this business was started by 2 doctors, and they're kind of ahead of the game with it. So I'd call that a sexier business. So we're still doing those as well.
No, it's very amazing, what people can do with franchises. What is the one thing that kind of blew your mind when you first got into franchises that, like, if you can, like, sell anybody on a franchise, what would you tell them?
Yeah, franchising, again, some people are too entrepreneurial. They don't want to stay within the lines. And I tell them that, franchising may not be right for you. But what I found time and time again is that franchising is a better path to business ownership for most people. And, nothing is totally de-risked. But when you look at the success rates of franchising versus startups, it's not even close. And so I think not having to, so I've had a business in the past that didn't work out. I had 40 employees, great team that we'd built up. We're doing a couple million a year. We had a marketing agency and we had a call centers. We were making the phones ring and then answering them. So it looked great on paper. People loved the idea, but they weren't willing to pay for it. It hadn't been proven out. They wanted it too custom, and we couldn't be profitable and make it as custom as we needed. I ultimately had to wind down that business. And, we found homes for our employees and a huge learning through the process, but also to open up my eyes to, hey, you've got to have that product market fit. And before you place big bets, you know, let's feel pretty confident. So, with the franchise, the goal is that you're going in eyes wide open. You get to talk to other existing owners in the franchise system. They can open up their books, tell you everything. Going in, you get the FDD, which is the franchise disclosure document. Every franchise system has one. Within there are 23 different items, and you've got your financial representations, your all-in investment, you've got the history of the franchise, how are they going to support you. Everything is spelled out. So you're not going in just with a pro forma on the back of a napkin, but you're going in with good factual historical information from which to decide, is this the right fit for you, for your market?
This is a question.
Yeah.
Do the franchisees have to operate on the books of the franchisor, or do they operate separate books?
So typically the franchisor will have visibility into the revenues. Oftentimes you are using a shared system, because you are paying typically 5 to 7% of revenue back to the franchisor, for their ongoing support, that in the form of a royalty. It's they do have visibility into the revenue, typically not all the way down the P&L though. They may ask you for reporting, and that's one of those things they'll be spelled out as what expectations do they have from a reporting standpoint. I mean, in the franchises I've been involved in as a franchisee, and even when I was a franchisor, I mean, we didn't have full visibility into the P&L. I mean, that was private to the owner.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Have you seen any real estate related, like investing side of franchises?
Absolutely. No, more than half of our clients are real estate investors as well, and see this as another way to diversify. In some cases, like I just had a large broker with Keller Williams buy into a property management franchise. And he said this is going to be a great complement to his core business. So that's an example that'd be directly involved. I mean, we've got real estate appraiser businesses within franchising. But then oftentimes, it's how can real estate be used? Oftentimes we have owners that purchase the real estate that's used for the franchise business. Maybe a martial arts franchise, or maybe a Massage Envy, Massage Heights type, a wide array, but they involve real estate to some degree. So there's a lot of unique real estate strategies you can deploy with it. There's a business, it's a renovation business that is backed by this team of designers that does the 3D designs for you and everything. And they cater to the clients of this business would be real estate agents. They're looking to do a $15,000, $20,000 3 to 4 week renovation, very facelift oriented, master bathroom and the kitchen, to sell a home. I had a client buy into that up in Charlotte back in the fall, and I mean he's killing it. Their average sales like 25,000. His first sale was like 65,000, and it's just done really well with that business. But so those are just examples of ones that are directly related. But then there's a lot of indirect as well. There's one right now. Speaking of unique businesses, it's concierge and valet trash removal for multifamily. So apartments and condos, they lock in these 3 to 5 year contracts. People put their wastebasket out every day. You've got a kid with his AirPods on, going around collecting it, literally dumping it. But they timestamp it, with the phone. They take pictures, sends automated reports. And then they've got a second business that complements that one that's a junk hauling business, where it kind of Uberizes the process, where someone can take a picture of what they want to have removed, and then it'll use artificial intelligence to quote over the phone the price versus having to send someone out to run an estimate appointment. And so it's actually a patented technology that they've developed and own. And these two businesses complement each other, because you always have people moving out of apartments, tossing their furniture and their couches.
Yep.
In a lot of cases, there's a green piece to it where you can donate or recycle those. So just neat businesses that you never would have thought of. They're needed.
That's amazing. Yeah, definitely needed. There's so many varying businesses that provide to the whole revolution of life and living that you don't even think about, that there's somebody's getting paid on that.
Totally.
100%. Tell us a little about your newsletter. I'm gonna put it right here, but tell us about your newsletter. What comes with it? Is it monthly? Is it weekly? Is it daily? And what information you provide through that?
Yeah, no, we send out some great content every month. We send out typically once or twice a month, and have a great engagement rate. I mean, we get an open rate close to 50%, on our emails. But no, it's just great content. We share recent podcasts that we've done or Forbes articles, things along those lines, some good content. But then we also highlight, a franchise or two, or to give some client examples, and we give some kind of encouraging entrepreneurial type of information and quotes and such. So I know we've got a very faithful subscriber list, and so totally free. That'd be an easy next step for anyone listening right now. Come out to our website, framebridgeconsulting.com. Share your information out there, and then we'll get you signed up for this newsletter. Also, if someone has some serious interest in taking the next step in exploring franchising, no commitment at all, but reach out to me. I can share some resources. Happy to jump on a 10 or 15-minute phone call and get to know you, and kind of share some thoughts to see if it makes sense to continue down that path. So love engaging on this topic and helping people, and would certainly open up that invitation to your listeners.
Well, I just want to thank you. I really appreciate the information, just because it's not a really talked about subject, and I appreciate people that provide information and just lay it all out just for everybody to understand. Just because a lot of people hoard in the information that they know, and it's just like, why would you do that? and I appreciate it. Like I said, I've learned a lot, and I have research I want to do now based off of franchising, just because it's intrigued my interest now. Intrigued my interest.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there's a lot of activity out there, and we're trying to create even more. So, appreciate you having me on, and certainly love talking about this. Happy to come back anytime.
All right, we're gonna put your Facebook, John Ostneson, and your LinkedIn. You have a pretty big following on LinkedIn. Do you post a lot on LinkedIn in general?
Yeah, we're out there most days with at least one post, and we've developed a good following. And there's so much interest in what we're doing, and so we have a lot of fun, providing great content and trying to help as many as we can.
I have a final quote, a final question, not quote,
Yeah.
but it's what is a quote that is yours or somebody else's that you resonate with?
Ah, gosh, there's so many. I'd say he who risks nothing does nothing, has nothing, and is nothing. Also, then one that I try to live by just personally would be to whom much is given, much is required. And so it comes from the Bible. And I'm a big believer in stewardship and stewarding opportunities and resources and everything else. So we're always looking for ways to get back, and we fail at it daily, but we're always trying to do better.
Amazing. I appreciate your time. I appreciate the value. I appreciate everything, man. This is a great opportunity and a great, hopefully people follow up with you through this podcast. And I appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Enjoyed it. Thanks for having me on.